The second of Joseph Haydn's Opus 74 quartets is a vibrant F major compositional tour de force. And for the past few days, it's been a refuge for this world-weary old codger. Like my three cats, a beautiful companion at a time of social distancing and curtailed activity. It's one of those compositions that makes me glad to be alive every time I hear it. It includes a number of bold harmonic experiments and great stretches of entertaining counterpoint that sometimes fly by at a dizzying speed. This music speaks so clearly for itself that a commentary from me seems almost superfluous, but I do want to offer a little upfront guidance and a few comments. The first movement is the kind of spirited sonata-form dissertation we'd expect, but with an unusual 8-measure introduction in the movement's basic tempo. That introduction is presented forcefully in pure unison, and its constituent motives will be put to good use in the main body of the movement. We'll also hear that introduction made reference to in a couple of unexpected places. The exposition is an amply proportioned one, setting forth a generous catalog of melodic and contrapuntal motivic gestures which will be pressed into service during the movement's mostly polyphonic development section, and some of the themes are rethought during the largely regular recapitulation. It is a joyful F major ride. For the second movement, Haydn chose the warmer subdominant key and a stylistic marking, andante grazioso, that suggests dance music that occasionally sings. The movement's AABA structural plan also provides for some variations, so here again we have one of Haydn's formal hybrids. The main theme is set forth in 2 repeated strains, although the Kodály Quartet, as usual, omits second strain repeats in this recording. The B theme, set in the parallel minor and featuring a soulful second violin solo, is actually another variant of theme A, an approach that we've seen in a number of Haydn's later quartets. The movement's coda includes some last-moment touches of parallel minor darkness, perhaps by way of drawing the movement's 2 contrasting modalities together for one last reconciliatory embrace. The F major minuet is worked out to plenteous length and features some entertaining interplay between the highest and lowest voices. The waltz-like trio, set in the flat submediant, which is probably the most striking of the harmonic relations in this composition, is an island of serenity in the midst of much hustle and bustle, and the da capo return to the F major minuet requires, in this case, a modulating bridge, a fairly unusual feature of Haydn's minuet writing. In his Joseph Haydn and the String Quartet, Reginald Barrett Ayers attempted to shed some light on the unusual form of the final movement, but in my view he generated rather more heat than light. I turned to that reference after struggling with the movement on my own terms for a couple of days, and the conclusion I came to is this, for whatever it's worth. For music of the late 18th century, if a musical form seems opaque at first, assume sonata form as the default position and see if the music honors it. If it does, then whatever else that movement contains is probably best understood as an emendation to sonata form. That, I believe, is the formal approach that best suits this movement. It begins with a cheerful rondo-style theme in 2 repeated strains, but that theme will not be used as a refrain, so it is a rondo in spirit only. The exposition unfolds quite regularly, treating us to a dark little theme during the second group, set over a throbbing bass and tonic pedal point, and the exposition is not repeated. The development begins with a dizzying double fugue that soon runs its course and gives way to another statement of that dark little theme referenced earlier, this time set in D minor. The recapitulation features the usual truncations. The main theme's strains are not repeated, for instance, and part of the second group is missing, not unusual in Haydn. The movement's formal novelty, a feature so unusual that it led Barrett Ayers into what seems to me an ineffectual attempt to describe a new form, is a coda so outsized that it brings to mind that image of the tail wagging the dog. And that coda is so slyly slipped into that we're in uncharted territory before we know it. But we've seen this before in Haydn, in other quartets published in 1793. I'm talking about Opera 71 and 74. And it seems to have more to do with an impulse to shift the composition's center of gravity from the first movement to the last, an impulse that had also obviously occupied Haydn's friend Mozart in the latter's great Jupiter Symphony, an impulse that also informed Beethoven's Eroica and would be fully realized in his Fifth and Ninth Symphonies. The present composition comes nowhere near those titanic scales, of course, but the thrust into the musical future seems unmistakable to me. And at any rate, this monumental coda is certainly enjoyable. The main theme puts in a little appearance at the very end, contributing a rondo-like touch to the whole and rounding out one of the most enjoyable musical experiences you're apt to have on this gorgeous spring day in the late-stage Anthropocene.
Thank you.